All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Jack. This is my good friend, Daniel.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Daniel.
So nice to see you. I got to see your face the other day on the screen on the TV at the temple.
You
That
did.
was really nice, but it's not quite the same as actually talking to you.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it was just kind of a sitting face with, I think, a mug of tea and yeah, no
There was a
communication.
little, you did distract me a little bit, I have to
No.
say. Yep, it's true. I was searching for signs of, like how you were doing. So I was like, I can't quite tell. Is Jack all right? Is Jack mad or what? So there was this whole sort of like, I'd say it was a good 15, 20 seconds, right? That I got distracted. Where I was just like, I can't quite tell. Like I wanted to like feel how you were feeling. I wanted to know how you were feeling, I
Yeah,
couldn't quite tell. I was unsure about it. But
interesting. What was there
I,
something that prompted that inquiry?
well, you see that smile right there? You see,
Uh-huh.
like you got this laugh and like everything, right? There's like this,
Yeah.
there's this like Jack that I sort of know. But of course you weren't the one talking. You were just sitting there observing and listening. So you just had sort of like your face on,
Maybe
right?
I have a resting bitch face. I don't know.
No, not bitch face. I wouldn't say that, but you definitely you had a resting face that made me feel sort of like, oh, I wonder if Jack's all right. And
I think I do have kind of a resting sad face, or maybe even a very like resting solemn face. That's
maybe.
kind of,
Were you okay? Were you all right?
I was okay. It is interesting that you ask though, and we'll get into a little bit more later. But I did go on retreat last week for a couple days, and that was a deep experience. So I think I was feeling a little bit some reverb from some of that. But also, yeah, good. So but yeah, maybe you saw a little bit of just like, I don't know,
Yep.
intensity or whatever.
Maybe it could have just been totally made up too. I just saw you
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, I know them.
Uh-huh. That's really sweet. Yeah. Yeah. How are you? How are you? Because I didn't get to see your face. I think I saw you very briefly, but yeah,
Mhm.
I only really get to see the speaker.
That was not me. I was just sitting on
Yeah.
the ground. I'm pretty good. So last week, my home life got sort of turned upside down, not in a negative way or anything. But I run a business with my brother who lives in Massachusetts. He's my half brother, and then he has another brother who also works with us. Right?
Mm.
Doesn't happen to be my brother. But what's funny about it is, it's been years since I saw my brother, and I've never, even though I've worked for 6 years with Nate, that's the other guy, I've worked for 6 years or more with him. I've never met him, and
Wow.
and so they both came to my place, and we had a type of retreat. We had an executive retreat
Yeah.
in Sacramento at my place. And it was a lot of fun. It was really enjoyable getting to see them and hang out with them and like feel more like familiar, with each other and stuff. So that was really, really wonderful. But it just kind of like, it threw off my routine. Like
Sure.
I like routine, man. I just,
Same.
stable, just here we go and here we go. And then everything just gets thrown off. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't really like it. I'm not a big fan of disrupting my routine, but it's necessary,
Yeah.
and I'm glad, so I did throw off my meditation practice a little bit, but I can feel like it's, I'm right back into the swing of things. So I guess I didn't miss too big of
Good. Yeah.
a.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
it's always, if we have those interruptions and like are not able to meditate, it's okay, what do we do after that? Like, can I come back?
Yeah.
And that's really important. It's like not letting it become a pattern or to spiral a little
You,
bit. Yeah.
you're right. You're right, Jack. I came this close to allowing it to spiral.
Did
So
you?
I
Oh,
did, which I'm very familiar with. I used to, man, I've spent a decent amount of time sort of on and then off right? And then feeling really bad when I'm off and stuff, and
Right.
being sort of like chastising myself and shitting all over myself and stuff, right? And so what happened was I noticed that I was like, all right, you know, they're gone and I'm back here. And there was this like, so actually what happened was it was early this morning. I was like, I got a full night's sleep. I was all excited because I was like, I'm going to wake up hella early and I am going to do some serious practice, right? I'm not just going to meditate. I'm going to do all kinds of stuff, right? And so I set up, I was ready for it. You know, I was like, yeah, I'm going to really get back into this. And then I woke up really early and I was rested.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to get out of bed.
Uh-huh.
And so then I sort of observed, I did end up getting out of bed. I did start moving and stuff, but I noticed that I was sort of like, well, maybe I need to do this, or maybe I should do this other thing first. Of course, I'm going to do of course I'm going to do my practices, but maybe I need to do these other things. And then I was like, Daniel, that's the same old shit, bro. Like that's how you get into that off mode, right? And then I remembered something. Matthew Cruz had said, I guess I probably referred to him quite a lot, but he had mentioned one time how important it is, even if you just touch your meditation cushion, just sort of acknowledge it and just say like, hello, I see you. I'm not going to meditate today. And then I realized I was like, oh, I'm just getting in my own way with these stupid expectations. It's totally fine to just sit down and meditate. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's how I got into this whole thing. All the other practices are great, nothing wrong with them, but it's okay too to just sit down and meditate. Yeah. And so I did that, and I was like, right. And I was like, I'm good. I'm not going into that sort of off period or that.
Right. And what's that Lama quote where he says, you know, the best meditation is the one that you do.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree. You know, obviously that's true. It was funny to sort of just catch myself, you know, like I could see it and I was like, I don't want to go there. Like, I like meditating. I like my practice. I like my routine. I want to keep it going. Right. Yeah. I see it got disrupted and I don't have to put extra obstacles in the way. I literally can just sit my butt down and meditate. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you kind of like, you kind of unshamed yourself, right? So maybe you like set up all these expectations about like, here's what I should be doing this morning, like I should be doing all these different practices, but then there was that resistance, and so like the mind starts going with all the other things that we should do, but then you kind of intervened with like a middle way, right, where it was like, you know what, I'm just gonna sit down, and so that seems like that was a pretty skillful approach.
I think so. It worked. It did, you know, like I don't get any sense that I'm sort of like in off mode still, you know, like it felt really good and felt really right. So I'm happy to report that I got some experience in working with my practice and trying to, you know, maintain consistency, which I think is really most important. One of the things that kind of surprised me, I a number of discussions that I had with my brother where I was sort of blown away by his insight as well, right? Like into sort of not necessarily Buddhist concepts or anything, but a lot of what he and I talked about while he was out here were there was a lot of synergy between that and my studies in Buddhism. So I was really pleased with that too. What about your practice? How about you?
Sure. Yeah. And thanks for sharing that stuff. That I like hearing about your life and family and work and whatnot. It's just good to get the updates. But yeah, I'm doing all right. I was just thinking on the ferry ride back home about how much I'm really growing. I'll say it in that way. I'll put it in a strengths-based way, right? Where instead of focusing on the negative, but I'm really growing in the area of my irritability towards others. There was a man on the ferry who really helped me practice my patience and compassion. He was sitting across from me on the ferry, and the whole ride, he was just coughing and had his fingers up his nose and was like biting his nails. And I was just like, yeah, this is the person that I need to try really, really try and develop compassion for and acceptance. And I'm wearing an N95 on the ferry still, and I'm fully vaccinated and whatnot, so I'm not too worried about COVID stuff. But even like pre-COVID or no COVID times, it's gross to do that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really just and we were kind of like a little bit distant. He was across from me, but like a couple seats down. And so I just I did this like very brief meditation of like reminding myself that that person like has been a child before, a baby, that person has like parents and has whatever his challenges are. And just reminding myself like, okay, this is a human. Humans are weird, humans are gross, but humans are also deserving of compassion. And I can try and do that with this person in front of me.
Nice. Did you, just out of curiosity, did you at any point consider him to have been your mother in a previous life?
I didn't do that one, but I do like that meditation a lot. That can help kind of equalize things for me.
Well, the reason I ask is because I notice when I do that, I don't always have, because I've never been a mom. I don't have any motherly instinct. Well, not in this life anyway. I've never been a mom. But I kind of like, yeah, I can kind of get the sense, of like, oh, hey, this person cared for me. I owe it to them to at least be considerate or not to have, harsh feelings towards them or something like that. But in this particular case, and in some others where I'm trying to like practice like you were doing on the ferry, what I find really helpful actually is to remember that at some point I was their mom, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's an odd sort of thing to sort of be like, oh, right, like, yeah, okay, they were my mom. And so I can have this sort of like, I owe it to them to be generous with, whatever, to try to be passionate and kind and all of that. Because at some point they displayed extraordinary kindness and sacrifice for me. Yeah. But I actually think in this case, somebody who's like coughing and picking their nose and biting their nails, they're like a little kid. Yeah, right? I know. They just haven't grown up yet. And I could kind of, because even though I'm not, I've never been a mom, I am a parent. And so like, I kind of get that feeling where I'm like, oh, well, it's easier actually when I just think of them as like my kids, then I'm like, oh, right, they're just gross little kids. That's like, that's just normal, right? And then it also sort of engenders like a slightly different heart kind of space. So like thinking of them as having been my mother does one type of thing. I can get that feeling, right? But like thinking of them being my kid is actually something that is easier for me to get sort of like a real like embodied feeling. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I've never tried that. And yeah, I might experiment a little bit. And I don't have kids in this life and I don't plan to, but I do love kids. So I could imagine that being really powerful. And just, that it's like, we're all just kind of like struggling babies, just flailing in one way or another. And exactly. Yeah, sometimes we, even if we might not be, picking our nose and biting our nails and stuff, we definitely fall into those little whiny crybaby modes, don't we?
Oh my gosh. Very much so. So yeah, that's been kind of my reflection on the day.
Sweet. Nice. That works out well. Well, we can be very, very grateful for that person being as gross as they were, because not only did they give you a moment to practice and consider sort of like your relationship to others, but you gave us something to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, fairy guy.
Yeah, I like you. I like you, fairy guy. Keep picking your nose.
Keep picking. Oh God, please no.
Just don't wipe it on the seat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Well, Daniel, we had a few topics we were gonna discuss tonight. Mm-hmm. We had talked about discussing refuge, maybe what it means to take refuge, and the prayer that we often do at the beginning of meditations. We also talked about retreat, which is, very present for me because I did a retreat last week. And then also relationship, like how Dharma and might show up in relationships or just in general. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
like the alliterative quality to the topics.
Me too.
All starting with an R like that. Well, would you mind? Since it's fresh on your mind, and you got it there, right? Like the idea, the concept of retreats. I don't actually have a lot to say about it, but I would love to hear about your experience, your recent retreat experience, as well as like whatever else you have to say about just the very concept of retreat.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because on Sunday, Lama gave a talk about Labab Duchen, which is actually today. It's a holiday that's occurring today. So happy Labab Duchen.
Right back at you, Jack.
Thanks. And that's like the celebration of the Buddha returning from one of the heavens where he was teaching his mother the Dharma. And one of the ideas that Lama kind of drew out of that story to apply to daily life is that, the Buddha or those of us living now, we have to go away sometimes. We have to take retreat. We have to get away from kind of our everyday to get somewhat of a different perspective. And in that tale, there's, kind of discussion on how some of his disciples were a little bit anxious, a little bit worried about him being gone for so long. But that sometimes that's just necessary to be away. And so the way that I think about retreat is that it's a removing of myself from my kind of everyday life and experience. Like, right now I'm looking at my room. There's a million things that I could do in my room right now that are just kind of basic everyday stuff. There's laundry on the ground that I haven't folded, there's books that I could be reading that I haven't read, I could make my bed, all these things. And so being removed from that and all of my kind of everyday experience allows me to go to a deeper place of reflection because there's not this kind of distraction around me, or kind of like what you were talking about, Daniel, when you woke up this morning and you were like, oh, what can I start out with first? It's not actually meditation, kind of starting on your checklist and whatnot. It's exactly that we do not have the checklist. We might have like a meditation schedule, but there's not this kind of like ordinary, here's what I got to do for the day and chores and all that type of stuff. So it's a little bit like extraordinary, a little bit extraordinary, if you will. And there's, for me, my experience when I've gone on retreats, and I've really the longest retreat that I've done has been 3 days. And so far, each of the retreats that I've done, I've been alone. Actually, no, I have done group retreat with the temple. It was just it's been a while. And then some of them have been like day-long retreats. So that feels a little bit different than like overnight. But yeah, so kind of short solo retreats. And what happens is that my afflictions start to arise in ways that I can really reflect on, because I don't have the same distractions that I would otherwise have at home.
Can you give an example?
Sure, food. So it's so funny because almost the second I get to the meditation retreat house, I'm thinking like, what's my next meal? What do I have to do to prepare for it? Can I have a snack before then? What kind of like seasonings do I want to add? How can I make it tasty? And it's like, and it's funny because I think that's like, food is like the one distraction that I really have on retreat. Whereas like, I don't have a TV, I don't bring books other than Dharma books. And I refrain as best as I can from texting. I don't call, I don't do phone calls. I don't have my laptop.
Right. You
Right.
actually went somewhere other than your home then?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Was it to a retreat center or just like an Airbnb or?
So there's this spot that's actually the Shakya Monastery in Seattle, has a retreat house on this on Whidbey Island up here in Washington. And so I've been going to that, and it's really cool because the whole space is like set up with all of this like Tibetan Buddhist imagery and artifacts and whatnot. And that monastery and the lay people, as well as the teachers, have been doing meditation practice and retreat there for 20 plus years.
Wow.
And so there's really a strong vibe, there's an energy there. So that's very special. It really does feel special. And it kind of allows me to drop in and really be able to meditate. I noticed that when I'm there, I can do shamatha in a way that I haven't really been able to do consistently at home. There's this kind of just, well, partly that there's this strong energy. You can feel that others have been meditating there. And then also that lack of distraction where I'm just like, I'm right there. I'm ready to be right there.
Yeah.
And Genlam Rinpoche's Calming the Mind, right? This is a very important text on shamatha meditation. And that's one of the recommendations, is that, ideally you can be somewhere where people have been meditating for a long time. And it's because it creates this very intentional space. And, I'm not very woo, like I kind of avoid woo stuff, but when you sit in that chair where like the teachers sit when they're doing retreat, you feel it. You absolutely feel it. If I read from a Dharma book when I'm sitting in the chair, I can like understand it better. It's incredible. Like it's so it's kind of a trip.
Do you think it's the woo, or do you think it's the concentration and intention and lack of distraction?
I think it's all of those things. Yeah. And I really do believe now in like kind of like Tibetan Buddhist magic. Like I think that there's a real there's something real happening there with I think just people who are really present and aware and bring that to a space consistently. It's really just the whole place is layered with it. But you can do meditation retreat, like you said, at an Airbnb. That's totally fine too. But ideally, it's great to have
it's set and setting, right?
Totally.
And so it's your mindset, which you might have some control over in other circumstances, but the setting that you're in, there's no way to replicate what you're talking about at an Airbnb or something.
There's not. Yeah. So if you're able to go to like End of Medicine Buddha or Tassajara, Green Gulch, those meditation retreats, that is really ideal, because you're going to be getting an experience that's more aligned with a serious kind of meditative practice. Like we said, you can do meditation anywhere, but if you're really trying to kind of drop in and like you said, set and setting, feel that kind of intentionality and seriousness of it, it really is powerful.
What was the structure like for your retreat?
So I mainly focused on shamatha, but I also have some other practices that I do every day. I consider them like responsibilities or whatnot. So that's succession guru yoga, and I did I think maybe like 5 sessions a day of half-hour shamatha sits. And then I would either read or also do like a tantric practice. And so that's a lot of meditation in one day. And I would really strongly recommend, if there's people watching who haven't done meditation yet, or haven't, or are just getting started, or don't have a teacher, don't do that. It's not going to go well. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be hard. It's possibly even going to be a little scary, because meditation can open up a lot of stuff in our mind. And so just start slow. That's how I started. I think, Daniel, that's how you started. We don't need to kind of do it all at once, because that it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So yeah, it's been a long time that I've built up to that kind of.
Do you get any, I mean, it sounds so, like, to me, like the actual concentration of meditating and reading the Dharma books and doing your practices and all of that, it seems like really good and wholesome and healthy. Are there times, like you said, it was a 3-day retreat, right?
It was about 2.5 days
Okay.
this time.
Okay,
Mhm.
at least a couple of days. At some point in the retreat, do you have ever, like, sort of like why am I doing this? Like, I had other things to do, or
Yes.
like something like that. Your mind just gets carried away, wanting to, like, what the heck am I even doing?
Yeah, and that's kind of that's some of the fun part of it, where it's like I could be a little bit more aware of that stuff this time, where I would notice when I actually did have that thought at one point, where it's like, oh, what am I doing? And this kind of resistance to some of like the imagery, and like where it's like, oh, all these people doing all this stuff, like I'm like, am I part of this now? I'm like,
I love it.
And because I have such like a strong like independent streak, and so that kind of stuff comes up for me, where it's like, oh, am I losing some of my autonomy? And I'm like, fighting back a little bit. That was kind of interesting to see. Fear, very much. I get nervous when I'm alone, especially at night. And I noticed that on the retreat, it peaks up even more. And so there would be times at night sitting in meditation that it's almost like my mind would just want to screw with me, and I'd hear sounds that would be like totally amplified, and I'd sit there and be thinking, I don't need to look behind me right now. I know logically that there is nothing behind me. But of course, a minute goes by and it's like, So that definitely came up, was like how much kind of fear and anxiety I have in my mind.
Yeah.
Very interesting to look at. And then also depression. Depression is a common visitor for me. And I think when I do that much meditation, they're going to show up. They're going to show up in some way.
That's you're inviting them. You're like, come on in.
Yes. Yeah. And so they came on in, and they sat down for some tea for a little while.
Dang, Jac. Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
It was a little intense. Yeah, it was definitely a little intense. But also there were moments of really, really deep peacefulness.
Yeah.
And some like tender joy, where that kind of, that just the quality of tenderness, where I can be with some of those challenges and really just hold some compassion for myself.
Yeah.
And it's pretty impactful on the last few days. Like, I've noticed a change, and just kind of my awareness. I'm more aware, and I think present in my everyday life than typical. And I imagine, it'll shift and ebb and flow and whatnot, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. You go into a retreat frame of mind, and then you have to enter into ordinary old life,
Yeah,
and try to hold a balance between that.
yeah.
So it sounds like a successful retreat. I couldn't help but think that there was like another R word that you taught me that applies here, which is resourcing. It sounds to
Mm,
me like you were in the retreat, sort of resourcing, right? Like building up your own sort of storehouse, if you will, of
yeah,
dharmic energy, or however you want to phrase that.
yeah, yeah, I think so. That's a good way to put it. Um, yeah, and just being aware of those kind of
Yeah.
afflictions and seeing them happen.
Not all retreats are silent. Were you engaged with other people, or were you silent, or like what was that like?
Well, I every time I did like a tantric practice, I would say it out loud. Uh I did go into town once, and this is actually a pretty funny
Oh,
story.
but there's nobody else there on the island with
No,
or there's-
on the at the retreat house. No, nobody else there.
oh, okay. All right. That helps.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, it was a solo retreat. But I did go into town to grab some coffee creamer, because it was like I gotta make my coffee fancy because I don't have anything else. So went in and got some coffee creamer, and I'm checking out, and they asked me if I want to round up, and immediately I'm just like, oh no, not today, thanks. And I'm like, wait,
I'm on
wait, I'm
retreat. Of
working
course
on
we got to round up.
I know. I was literally like, the last meditation that I had done was thinking about generosity and how I was trying to generate generosity, and literally was like, oh yeah, I can give 75 cents to this random community center, like
You are so generous, Jack.
it's so funny to see that stuff, and
Yeah.
how like once we're back into kind of ordinary realm, it's like it's so hard to catch that stuff. It
Right.
really just slips by. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've only been to one like official retreat, and that was it was with the temple. It was just a 1 day retreat. You were there, weren't you? Yeah,
I might have been there.
yeah,
When was it?
up in the hills.
Hmm.
It was really quite lovely. It was really enjoyable, and I kind of got a taste of that sort of, you're just out of your ordinary reality, and there was something really pleasant about, being with other members of my community who are all sort of there for the same reason, and we're all sort of like relaxing into it and stuff. But I felt like it was a little too short. Like I never actually really, it took a while, just like a vacation or something. It takes a little while to, like, I imagine, to sort of relax into it and sort of get used to the retreat life, which is why I imagine, like some of the longer retreats, I can kind of see how attractive they are, because it takes a minute to kind of like get the mind to calm down and to get your ordinary everything, to kind of just settle a bit and get used to, I imagine, the retreat life, if you will. I talked to somebody recently. They came to beginners meditation. They said they had been on several 90-day silent retreats.
Yeah.
That just like so I don't know, like I just sort of like my mind sort of just was like, what? Like how in the world do you even do that? It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it would be in some ways kind of devastating,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um like it's just so completely out of my realm of experience that I think it would be, yeah, just shocking in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can kind of see how, like, if you don't have a teacher, if you haven't been around, or I don't know another way to put it. If you're not very skilled, I can kind of see how like longer meditations, especially silent meditations, how they could be really kind of harmful.
I think so.
Like I
Absolutely.
think people like pushing themselves, I'm going to go and do this because that's going to like get me closer to enlightenment faster or whatever. Like, first of all, I don't think it works that way. But like, second, I can just imagine, like, even for I can imagine for myself, right? Like if I were to go and do that right now, I think it would probably be detrimental, but something like what you were talking about, that I can handle that, like a couple
Yeah.
days and yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're
Did
right.
you, were you, just out of curiosity, were you sort of on like vacation mode too? Like, were you like waking yourself up to meditate and stay, or were you just sort of like also just relaxing into the nature and being,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's yeah, I did allow myself time outside, which I think actually is part of a meditation retreat, is that, at least what this kind of schedules that Lama has given me before is that, do some meditation, maybe do a little reading, go outside for a walk, see
yeah,
some things around you, and take it in. Because yeah, I think otherwise there's this like quality of I don't know, almost like masochism, where it's like,
yes, right, yeah,
we're just like, I gotta bear down and just like sit with my mind and like just pummel through this. But that's not how my mind works.
right.
In fact, I
Well,
think my mind is
yeah,
already too tight. I need to let it out a little bit. And so for me, it's really important to give myself some space to say, like, no, actually, you are just going to relax right now.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can kind of imagine too, sort of wanting to get something, that sort of like a hint of spiritual materialism coming in, that,
Sure, yeah.
like I'm going to go and I'm going to do this thing for a certain amount of time. And maybe there's this sort of masochistic element to it, but regardless, it's going to be disciplined and it's going to be this and that. And I'm going to come out a different person, or I don't know, there's going to be I'm going to have an experience. I think all of that would probably be, it wouldn't be helpful. But
Yeah.
I'm looking at, I'm kind of I'm encouraged. I think I might try that. I might try like a 2-day retreat.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And maybe, chat with Lama and see like
yeah,
kind of
for sure.
schedule what I want to do.
Yep.
Because it would probably be different than what he suggests for me.
Yeah, no doubt. You'd probably tailor it,
Yeah, it's kind of
just
fun.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that, Jack. That sounds remarkable.
Okay. Yeah.
When are you gonna do it again?
I'm hoping, I'd love to be able to do something like that maybe every like 4 months. So like 3 times a year.
Sounds good.
Or 3 or 4 times a year would be great. Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, there were other weird things too. There was a dead hawk outside of the house that's had its head bit off. There was some interesting I'm not sure if they were things that I should consider symbols, or just like, yeah, death happens. That's something that happens. But
well, I mean,
just a side note, that was kind of odd. Yeah.
I like it. It's all truth, right? I was reading something earlier, about the notion of not actually considering something sacred and something secular. In fact, it's all just dharma. It's all just is. And so in that sense, the hawk just is. It just is.
Yeah.
There you go. You can derive from it all the meaning you want, like, sure. Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe what do they call them? A naga maybe like came by and like left it there for you.
Right. Oh, what are they trying to say?
Or just a dead hawk happened to be there. Maybe.
Right. It's both. It is both. Yeah.
I do that same thing. I kind of read into things a little bit where I'm like, on the one hand, I see it, it's just mundane, ordinary, whatever. But on the other hand, you can actually, like there's this ability to sort of like create like something like a sacred symbol, if you will, out of something. I notice a tendency to do that on my own. So right there with you.
Nice. Well, yeah, thanks for letting me share. That was nice to be able to reflect on retreat.
It's inspiring. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to share all about it with you.
I'm so excited. That's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, should we move on to Refuge?
Yeah, let's do it.
You might have noticed I'm not quite as bald as I am usually.
I see it.
Do you notice?
Yeah, letting it out.
I'm letting it out. I'm going to grow my long like locks and just let it flow. But it's intentional. Normally I would just buzz it, but I realized, you see, I'm planning on taking Refuge next month.
Ooh.
And I was like, I know Llama usually cuts a little bit of hair.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I don't want him to have to like cut my eyebrows or something, you know? So I figured I have enough time to at least get a little bit of something here going in the back so he can give it a good clipping and get some hair out of there.
That's great. I am so excited to witness that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I've been putting it off for like yeah, well, not putting it off. I wouldn't call it that, but it's been what, 5, 6, 7 years. It's been years.
Yeah.
Since I was aware there was even such a thing as a refuge ceremony, and
Right.
yeah, I've been inching my way towards it. I think that the way that I sort of have likened it in the past is that it kind of feels like a little bit of a black hole or something that has like an event horizon on it, and I've been sort of circling it, and then now I'm like past that event horizon, and I'm like coming in hard.
You're
right?
in. You're in.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in yet. I'm working on it though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's describe a little bit what refuge actually is. I mean, I love the word itself, refuge. You know, I think when I think of refuge, I think of a safe haven. I think of, you know, calm waters. I think of just yeah, sanctuary, you know, when like finding sanctuary, even not even peacefulness, but in a you know, I'm the thing that pops up to me is that that movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or, you know, it was a book, but where she's pounding on the church door like sanctuary, you know, it's sanctuary. And I think of it as that way, like refuge is this finding safety and in the chaos that we're in. And that it's this way to commit to a path, basically. That's kind of the general idea that I get. Yeah. What are some of your kind of initial thoughts when you think of refuge?
Well, so part of what got me to finally sort of like consider it seriously, like, so I in the past I've gone running every time the subjects come up. Like, I'm just like, no way, I'm too scared, I don't want to do it, I'm afraid of commitment, I don't want to screw it all up, I have doubt, I'm not so sure about all of this stuff, and whatever. There's all of that kind of thing that's been lingering, that's been sort of, you know, been a wedge between me and the concept of taking refuge. But something that helped me a lot was, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 months ago, something like that. Matthew Cruz shared, he just randomly texted me a link to an article by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche.
I love that article.
You already know what I'm going to say. The Decision to Become a Buddhist. That's the article. And so he shared that with me, and it just sort of like, I was like, whoa, this isn't anything like what I was thinking. And like, it resonated, it just hung out for a while, you know, like, and then I'd read it again and I'd be like, wow, that's really saying what I think it's saying, you know? And there was just something in there that kept kind of like, in that particular article, I read other things, I've listened to things about taking refuge and whatnot, but that particular article, that one writing it's so convincing, I guess. And one of the things that I think is interesting about it is that Rinpoche doesn't actually spend a lot of time talking about the safety aspect of it, right? Which I thought was, I like it, because I do the same thing. When I think of refuge, I think of like a shield. I think of something like, yeah, there's all kinds of things exploding and flying all around and all kinds of dangers in this world. And I need protection somehow from all that bad stuff. It's sort of like a way that I have in the past thought about refuge. But in the article, Rinpoche really describes it more like as becoming a refugee, a homeless refugee. And that's not quite, in fact, that's kind of like the opposite of what I initially was thinking, right? Like, because a homeless refugee doesn't sound safe, you know, It doesn't, and it doesn't really, I'm like, what does it mean then to take refuge if it's not about safety? You know, and the way that he describes it, he says that it's about when you take refuge, so you're taking refuge in the triple gem, right? The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And that what it really is, what it amounts to is taking refuge in the Buddha as an example, the Dharma as the path, and the Sangha as companionship or companions on the path. And that really what's happening is that there's a sort of illusory nature of security, right? That actually there is no freaking safety.
Right.
So that's sort of like, you know, like it's not the way that I was thinking about it, right? Like he's saying like all safety, all security, all sense of a home is illusory. It's not real. It's gonna change, right? And you're gonna lose it. If you're too attached to those things, right? It's just gonna continue to, that's the harm that we're trying to protect ourselves from, right? Is the harm of all that attachment to security and a sense of me and a sense of home, and it's all gonna be okay somehow. Maybe God will come down if I just say the right prayers and they'll save me, you know, like there's that sort of thing. And what is so radical about what Chogyam Trungpa is saying in the article is like, no, you're going to be alone. You know, you'll have companions, you'll have inspiration from your teacher, you'll have, you know, friends and companions in the Sangha who are also just as confused and just as delusional as you are, but they at least have the same kind of same idea, the same kind of roadmap, if you will, the same idea about where they're going to go and how they're going to get there, and that can be really helpful. Yeah. And so like that article really did it for me. I mean, like more like there's so many other things, but like that one like just did it. And there was there's like a number of quotes in there, but one of the ones which I just like, it's kind of simple, but it says when taking refuge, it says we take a definite vow to enter a discipline of choicelessness, which saves us a lot of money, a lot of energy, and lots of superfluous thinking. And it reminds me that, you know, like, so this, my experience in samsara is this, this experience of like recognizing that the things that I'm attached to and that I desire and whatnot, like recognizing that they're not necessarily, they're not doing what I want. They're not lasting. It's not lasting joy, happiness, peace, whatever. It's temporary. And yet I still, like, I get enough distance from them and I'm like, oh, but maybe, and then I go back, right? And so there's this constant cycling around back to the same old shit again.
And it's exhausting, it's torturous.
It really, and it wastes a lot of money, right? A lot of time, a lot of energy, all of those things, you know? And that what this is like it's like a real, like, clear technique, as we've talked about, right? It's a method. It's a way of like basically saying like, okay, I checked that box. I found that what I'm looking for isn't there. It's not going to be there. It cannot be there. I'm going to move on to the next one. And then the next one, the next one. And then there's a sort of systematic analysis or whatever that helps you to get out of that cyclical path, right? The cyclical samsaric stuff. So yeah, that's the inspiration for me. And I got to say, man, anybody who's listening, if you have not read the article called The Decision to Become a Buddhist by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, do it.
It will change your life. Yeah. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because while I do really, rely on the triple gem as a source of safety and protection, it really was that article that helped me see what exactly I was taking refuge in. Not that it was some, saviorism, that I was going to be saved, but that I was going to have to be serious. And something about that really empowered me, and also I think helped me cut through some of the anxieties I had around like for one, like, is this a cult?
Right.
And two, you know, like, well, sometimes I see Sangha members doing things that annoy me or bug me or don't seem very Dharma-like or whatever. And so that kind of cut through, like, well, this is, you know, this is a path of the individual. Like, yes, you've got these supports, and also you've got to rely on your Sangha members. And but ultimately it's about what am I doing, and what kind of choices am I making?
Exactly.
And so that was really powerful for me. I actually got that. I don't think I got the article from Michelle, who we've talked to before on the show, but I did look it up after I had a conversation with her. And, you know, I was just kind of wanting to explore with someone who had already taken refuge, like, what exactly is this? You know, what does this mean? And she was very straightforward with me about, this is very hard. This is challenging. Like, it's going to challenge you. Like, it's not just some like sweet meditation retreat at like I don't know, like where you get to sit in a hot tub and get to enlightenment that way, you know, like it's really, it's you're going through your mind and the things that make me sick, the way that I'm making myself sick. And, you know, it's these poisons that I've been feeding myself for, you know, my whole lifetime and many lifetimes before this. And so it feels normal. It feels right. And so getting myself off of these poisons, just like, you know, getting yourself off of alcohol or drugs, is like, it's some tough shit.
Right. Yeah, you're scaring me, Jack. But
No,
no,
it's good.
I've had 5 years or more to think about this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. Come on.
Yeah.
It really, like, it's not going to get any clearer. You know, it's nothing like that, right? Like I get it now. I think I understand, you know, as best I can, and it seems like the right thing for me. I did want to point to one other resource that I found incredibly helpful. Back in, I think it was 2019, it may have been earlier, there was a visit to the temple by the Reverend Jim Hare from Valley Streams Zen
Yeah.
Center.
Yeah. I think I was there
So
for that.
you were there?
Well, was it, did you say 2019?
I think so.
Yeah. That, and then I think
Somewhere.
I was there for that. Yeah.
I think it was probably the last time that he was there. So if you got to see Jim Hare, was he talking about taking refuge in our Buddha nature? Do you know? Maybe not.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, it was
Yeah.
the one. So I mean, I don't know. I've listened. So the talk is on SoundCloud. Lions Roar Dharma Center has a SoundCloud account that is a treasure trove. It is truly like the most like it is something that you know, bookmark that thing, and then if you ever need to listen to something, that stuff's good. And so I've listened to Jim's talk a number of times because I have been really like this topic of refuge has been like it's been eating at me ever since I heard about it. You know, like it hasn't gotten away. And so like when I heard his talk, I ended up listening to it multiple times over multiple periods, sort of like the article by Chogyam Trungpa, where I just kept coming back to it. There was something there, like some encouragement, some clarity, something. And there was a question. Somebody in the audience asked him a question at the end of his talk, which was like, "What's up with the vows?" Right? And so I think that that's an important part, right? You take these vows, and what he said really like struck a chord with me. And he said, the vows are turning you in the direction of Buddha. It's like Buddha direction, right? It's just like so like if you're, you know, maintaining those vows, you're aimed as straight as you can towards Buddhahood, right? Whereas, you know, and I can see it now. I'm like, oh, I get it. I get how they're helpful, right? But that was one little takeaway that I had from his talk. But it's another little treasure. So like if people are thinking about refuge or interested in the subject, I highly recommend listening to that. And Jim Hare came to Lions Roar. It's good stuff.
Oh, thanks for that. Yeah, that's a really good resource that I forget about, is that SoundCloud. And yeah, that sounds like a great talk. Yeah, and you know, the vows really are, I think it's so hard to think about committing to to vows, and I think about I would always do the thing of like, but what about the cases where I might need to lie, or what about when I might need to steal, like for
Mhm.
come up with all the like kind of fringe ways that I might need to do that,
Right.
and I don't think that Dharma is so black and white. That's something that I've really learned,
Yeah.
that there might be a time that you would need to lie because maybe it was in the safety interest of yourself or someone.
Totally. Yeah.
And so there's reason, I think there's a lot of reason within Dharma.
Right. Well, and the vows are to and for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to get punished by some almighty God, right?
Right.
It's
There's no
just
karma police, right?
no, nothing like that going to be happening. So I like in that sense, it's helpful. I know Lama's helped me with that too. I have a black and white sort of all or nothing mentality.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And I wouldn't believe it, but it's been pointed out to me, sort of a perfectionist streak. And that the perfectionism is not so much in reality, like actually making things perfect, but just like mentally stopping myself by saying like, well, it's got to be perfect or else. And so there's this sort of like, that's been part of it with the vows where I'm like, man, like, I don't know. What if, like, not even a what if, like, what if I have to lie, but what if I just freaking, I'm just going to lie, or I'm going to cheat, or
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
do some drinking and whatever, fooling around, right? All that stuff. Like maybe, who knows? And so like, he was helpful in sort of in helping me understand, the, it's like a strong intention, right? It's a direction, as the Reverend said. It's not some kind of solid promise to somebody else, right? It's just saying like, no, really, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to it, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
I was going to ask you, I hope it's not too much to ask you, and hopefully I know we only have a couple of minutes here, but I wanted to, so at the end of that article about Refuge, Chogyam Trungpa says, it's the discipline of taking refuge is something more than just doctrine or ritual. He says, you are being physically infected with commitment to the Buddha Dharma. Buddhism is transmitted into your system. At that particular point, the energy, the power, and the blessing of basic sanity that has existed in the lineage for 2,500 years enters your system, and you finally become a full-fledged follower of Buddha Dharma. You are a living future Buddha at that point. Would you say that you feel that, having taken refuge?
When I look back at who and how I was before I took refuge, yeah, I can say that it's had that effect. I think you're absolutely right in sharing that about the vows like turn us in a direction. And so I am in no way Buddha, and I have so many things to work on, but my direction is clear, and I have less anxiety about that. And I when I have less anxiety about what I'm doing, and just kind of know that no, this is my path, like there's this a little bit of a burden that gets put down. The
real
path gets a
freedom,
little lighter.
an experience of freedom, finally.
We get a,
and it's so weird. It's such a weird counterintuitive thing that if you really, really want to exercise freedom, you got to give it up. That's the only way to do it, right?
Our misperceived version of freedom. Where it's like, oh, I get to do whatever I want. I get to drink. I get to, sleep with anyone I want. All
that's
these.
Right.
That's my version of freedom, right? That's what I think freedom is when I'm in my, kind of, thoughtless state. But
that's right.
Giving that type of freedom up means that I am free to be a genuine, present, kind, and just like loving of life person.
You get to be your actual real self.
Yes, you get to be your actual real self. Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, yay. What a good thing to end on, Daniel. I am really excited to hear about your new commitment, and I'm so looking forward to seeing that. What day is that, by the way? Is that in December?
It's in December. We don't know yet when.
Okay. Okay.
Stay
I'll
tuned.
look for it. Yeah.
Just watch for the hair to grow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rub, if it doesn't happen fast enough, I'm gonna put chia seeds in there.
Yeah. Let's see him grow.
So good. It's always so good to talk to. Like sometimes I feel like I'm like, oh, are we gonna really be able to talk for an hour? But then it like goes by like that.
I know, it's wild. Yeah, we didn't even get to our third topic of relationships, so that'll have to be in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's probably for the best.
Yeah. Well, we will be gone next week. I will be visiting family for Thanksgiving week. So I will not be here, but we will be back in 2 weeks. And I'm really looking forward to check in with you, Daniel, in a couple weeks.
I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and safe travels and all that. And yeah, we'll see you when you get back. Thank you so much.
Good. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks to
Bye,
everybody.
Jack. Bye, everybody.
Take care.